Early Monday morning on July 11th in 2016, Zuffa, the parent company of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, has announced it is indeed sold to new owners. A conglomerate between WME and IMG have bought rights to the organization for a reported $4 billion. Current owners, the Fertitta brothers, will still own a minority stake, and eventually later this year, Renzo Fertitta, current chairman of the UFC, will step down but will remain on temporarily in a transitional period. Dana White will still be the president of the organization and, however, will own a slightly smaller stake than the roughly 9% he currently owns. According to a report on FoxSports.com, no percentages in terms of what WME IMG will actually own in the UFC, but the Fertittas own roughly 80% of the organization, 9% roughly to Dana White, and the rest going to Flash Media from the Middle East. So I'm assuming all those percentages will be shifted towards WME IMG moving forward. But again, from what I have seen, and according to a report on FoxSports.com, no official percentages have been made. But I got to imagine that for $4 billion, they're going to be getting 75 to 85% of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Most things will stay the same. This organization, of course, IMG, until merging with WME a couple of years ago, already one of the larger companies in sports, mainly started as an agency, but has gone on to produce and help sports programming as well. And one of the leaders of this organization was a friend with the UFC. Also, IMG represents Ronda Rousey. Ari Emanuel and Patrick Whitesell have been friends with the UFC, mainly Emanuel, and he was an integral part in helping the UFC land its 7-year deal with Fox Sports back in 2011. So the guy kind of heading up this group is obviously a fan of the sport, has been friends with the UFC for a while. So I think from that standpoint, it's good. It's not going to somebody that has no idea what this business is about, what the sport is about, and somebody obviously that is not trying to make major changes. This company is obviously seeing this as investment. I mean, $4 billion. So they're trying to build the sport, hopefully grow it more, and in the case for them, hopefully it'll make them some money. That's the ultimate goal for them. And considering the Fertittas, for any of those who think, why would they sell? Well, they bought this company for $2 million. Selling it for $4 billion is roughly a 200,000% increase in your ROI. That's return on investment, for those of you who don't know. So if you can buy something and then later on, regardless of the years, and get 200,000% more than you paid for it, how can you not sell it? As much as the Fertittas love this sport, they saved it, were able to grow this company into something that is worth $4 billion, and they still get to keep a little piece of it. I can't really blame them for selling the company. The only thing about this sale that is a little sour is the fact that Dana White and a lot of the UFC brass and employees were hush about it and outright denying that a sale was imminent or even about to take place. And even going as so far to threaten reporters who said that a sale was imminent with lawsuits. And obviously that's all false now. They would have lost all those cases if anyone actually, really took it that far. But I don't care that it's sold. As long as everything runs the way it has been, there's not too many major changes. I really don't see a problem with it. Again, they got a guy leading the group who is a fan of the sport, so I think that helps. And I don't know. We'll see moving forward. I don't know how this will affect much. Dana White's still going to be the figurehead, so to me, it's pretty much going to be business as usual. I just didn't like the outright denial of all this and the threat of lawsuits. I think that was unneeded, and it goes to show maybe how paranoid they are, how controlling some of the people in the UFC can be, especially when you add in how they treated reporter Ariel Helwani. So I think it's just them just not liking the media reporting false things or trying to jump on things before they want to release the information. I really think that's what it is. The UFC wants to be the ones that announces it first with their own company, not some reporter who got a scoop from this guy or that guy or what have you. So I think that, like I said, going back to the Juani thing, who broke the Brock Lesnar story before the big promo, the UFC is not very fond of other people stating their big news. So I think they didn't take, I mean, no one got actually injunction or subpoena or anything like that, as far as I know, but it still was pretty crazy that they even went to that sort of level to try to cover up something that was going to happen here, selling the company to WME IMG. So I'm excited. I think it's a good move. Again, I can't blame the Fertittas for selling. These guys have a lot of experience managing athletes, helping produce sports content, and helping other sporting avenues and organizations. So I think this is a good thing. I think it also could maybe help to fighters getting the correct representation, and it could lead to better fighter rights as well, which as of right now is relatively poor. So we'll see how this all goes moving forward. Of course, it just happened today as time of recording on Monday, July 11th, so we'll see how that pans out. A lot of stuff to cover on this week's show. Of course, 3 fights happened last week. We're going to start here first with Thursday's card, UFC Fight Night 91, shown exclusively on the UFC Fight Pass. 4 fights were part of the main card, and that, of course, started on the Fight Pass. And the first fight of the evening was Joe Duffy against Mitch Clark. And looking over that matchup, I picked Joe Duffy. I expected him to win, but I definitely did not expect him to win as quickly as he did, as he was able to land a big shot, drop Mitch Clark, got him down, swung around, got his back, and then was able to sink in the rear naked choke, I believe, less than 20 seconds into the first round, officially 25 seconds with the rear naked choke, and Joe Duffy's back on the winning track after losing to Dustin Poirier back in January. So, good win for Joe Duffy. Mitch Clark, solid competitor, not the best guy Duffy has fought so far in the octagon, and Mitch Clark was coming off about a year layoff, and again, that is pretty much it. I mean, Joe Duffy gets the win. I expected him to win. I think most people expected Joe Duffy to win. And now with this quick fight, I think he's ready to go for another probably bottom end of the top 15 competitor. I think that's probably what's next for him. In terms of a name, I'm not really sure who might be there for Joe Duffy. I think Will Brooks would be a good name. I don't know if that's a fight that could happen, but I think that would be a very solid matchup. Also, I think Francisco Trinaldo would be a pretty good fight as well for Joe Duffy. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, it's a win over Conor McGregor, so that always kind of helps building him up for any potential fight. And obviously, having a finish like that is always good. Moving to the next fight of the evening, it was in the welterweight division as Alan Joe Boy took on a UFC newcomer, Bilal Muhammad. Incredible fight. In fact, one fight of the night. And boy, I thought that Muhammad would have trouble with the striking of Joe Boy, and he did, especially early on in that first round, as looking at the overall striking numbers per round, he got outstruck 34-9 did Muhammad to Joe Boy. And then in rounds 2 and 3, I think Joe Boy, because he had dropped Muhammad a couple of times in that first round, may have kind of tired himself out. Now, round 2, Muhammad actually outstruck Joe Boy 35-28. It was a very close round. Muhammad did, however, get a takedown in there. You could probably score that round either way. I would have scored it for Muhammad myself. And then around 3, that was definitely all Muhammad. Wasn't able to land a takedown, but definitely was the fresher fighter entering that final frame. Joe Boy did answer. I believe he did drop Muhammad briefly in that round, but Muhammad still outstruck Joe Boy 64-43 but when the judges' scores came down, they went 28-27, 29-28, and 29-27. So there either must have been a 9-9 or an 8 round. I guess you could make a case that the first round may have been an 8 for Joe Boy, and that gives Alan Joe Boy the victory over Belal Muhammad. But in my breakdown, I thought Joe Boy would get by Muhammad relatively easily. That was not the case for the UFC newcomer. A lot tougher than I thought, and really after that first round, he was able to weather the storm, come back strong, and I think he does have a bright future, but obviously he's going to have to do better in the first round because I think that may have cost him the fight, especially, like I said, I believe 2 judges may have given him an 8, and obviously that's going to hurt the scoring moving forward, even if you are able to get the final 2 rounds. So overall, Joe Boy, a great first round. Obviously, he's going to have to work on his conditioning, and for Muhammad is just maybe trying to not eat as many punches early. But great fight. Definitely one of the best fights of the whole entire 3 days of fights. Heavyweight division, Roy Nelson against Derrick Lewis. And who thought that Roy Nelson would be the one to make a fight born, not his opponent? As Roy Nelson, really after getting dropped several times by the Black Beast and really taking a beating, he didn't really want none of that, especially after the first round where he only got outstruck 26-25, but if you look at the significant strikes, almost all of those were significant strikes by Derrick Lewis, who also mixed in some knees in the evening as well and some kicks. Round 2, not a lot happened. Roy Nelson was able to land 3 takedowns, outstruck Derrick Lewis 19-3. I thought definitely took that run. Round 3 was an interesting one because Derrick Lewis only officially landed 10 strikes, but those 10 strikes did way more damage than the 22 landed by Roy Nelson, including the one where you see the spit flying out of Roy Nelson's mouth. And also, of the 2 takedowns Nelson did land, Derrick Lewis didn't stay down long, was able to get back up. Now, Nelson was leaning on Lewis a lot up against the cage, so you could kind of score that one either way, that third round, because Nelson was definitely controlling the pace of that round, really wasn't allowing Lewis to get too many strikes off. And really, besides that last minute and a half, that's really where Lewis landed the majority of those 10 strikes in that final frame. I think I would have gave Lewis the third round, but I can see how one judge did score the third round there for Roy Nelson. And this is a tough one to score because you have a guy that is controlling the pace a lot in Roy Nelson, but he's not doing a lot of damage. He's not actively seeking to finish the fight. He's trying to do enough to win. And I think the judges, at least 2 of them, saw that and realized Derrick Lewis is trying to end this fight. He is trying to do damage. And it's going to be, it's always an ongoing debate. How much do you weigh control and how much do you weigh damage? And in this fight, the damage ended up winning out. After the fight, Derrick Lewis said that his next fight, he wants to rematch Roy Nelson. He wasn't satisfied with a split decision victory, says he wants to finish Roy Nelson. And Nelson didn't look happy after the fight. Obviously he lost, but thought he did enough to win. So that could be next. I wouldn't mind to see Derrick Lewis take on someone else in the top 10. I think a matchup, I know he's coming off a loss, but I think a matchup against Travis Brown, I think would be a really exciting fight. And Travis Brown, a tremendous finisher as well, so I think that would be a good fight, possibly moving forward. Or he's again coming off a loss, but Derrick Lewis against Mark Hunt would be a lot of fun. It really would. I mean, 2 just big dudes swinging. I think you really can't go wrong with either one of those matchups, and either could be a main event or a co-main event of a Fox Sports 1 or even a Fox National Fox Sports card. So, getting to the main event of the evening, Eddie Alvarez against Rafael dos Anjos. Of course, I had Eddie Alvarez on the program before the fight, and one of the more intriguing quotes that Eddie said in the interview was that he was going to land a big shot, Dos Anjos was going to make a mistake, and if he didn't go out, he was going to scoop up a win on a wounded fighter. And watching this fight, even though it lasted just the 1 round, I was surprised to see Eddie shoot the first takedown. I would have thought Dos Anjos would have been the first fighter to take a takedown. So that to me was a sign that maybe things weren't going Eddie's way. I thought the striking was relatively even, maybe a little bit advantage for Dos Anjos. I think that he was doing a good job pressuring Eddie Alvarez, putting up his back against the cage, taking control of the center of the ring. You know, Alvarez had a couple of nice punches and inside leg kicks early. Dos Anjos definitely was pressuring him. I thought landed a few nice shots of his own, but then a big right hand landed. And when it turned into that brawl where Alvarez was able to throw technique out of the window and footwork and movement and could just throw his powerful looping shots, he was doing a lot in Bellator. It was going to be hard for Dos Anjos to, one, recover, and two, stop that onslaught. When Eddie is in that mode, he's one of the best at a brawl like that, just throwing caution to the wind. And he was all over Dos Anjos from that point, and eventually got the stop late in the first round while he was battering Dos Anjos, who was standing up in one of the corners, officially 349 into the first round to become the UFC champion, the first ever fighter to have won a Bellator championship and a UFC championship. So for Eddie Alvarez, I mean, he did what he said he was going to do here on the show. He landed something big and he got the finish. I think this is a fight I would like to see again because I think Dos Anjos, I think he was winning the fight up until the fact he got caught. Now, again, he did get caught. I'm not trying to take anything away from Eddie Alvarez, but I think if they met again, I don't know if that plays out the same way with the first round knockout. However, congrats to the new champion. I'm interested to see who he takes on next. Of course, later on in the program, you'll hear Tony Ferguson speak in one of the other videos that I'll be posting this week for his fight at Sioux Falls. He seemed like Eddie Alvarez didn't want anything to do with him, but he is fairly confident he can get a title shot if he gets by his opponent on Wednesday. So that is a guy that's out there. Obviously, Khabib is out there. If Nate Diaz beats Conor McGregor again, Nate Diaz is a name that could pop up. So there are some interesting fights here for Eddie Alvarez moving forward, and I'm assuming he'll probably fight at least one more time here in 2016. Looking at Friday night's Ultimate Fighter 23 finale, also again in Las Vegas on Fox Sports 1. 6 fights were shown on the main card, and after going 3-1 on Thursday night, it was only able to go 3-3 on Friday. First fight of the evening, Joaquim Silva against Andrew Holbrook, did not go as I thought it would. I thought Holbrook would be able to impose his size and will on the Brazilian Silva, but never really got a chance to do that as Silva was able to land a big shot early. Holbrook wasn't able to recover, and it was an interesting shot because it was kind of in a scramble. There was an attempted takedown. Holbrook kind of fell down. He was attempting to get back up, and while he was trying to get back up from the scramble, Silva came in, landed a right hand that Holbrook just did not see coming, knocked him down. Silva landed a couple more and got this one quickly in the first round, just 34 seconds. And it's just one of those, it's not a fluke, but it's just one of those situations where you're trying to get up, you're not really worrying about getting hit, you're not expected to be getting hit, you're just trying to get back up to your feet so you can get to a defensive position, and Silva was able to catch him before his hands could get up, and good on him. He got the finish, and a big win for him, taking out a very tough, undefeated fighter in Andrew Holbrook. Dooho Choi, the Korean Superboy, against Thiago Tavares. If fans remember back in my breakdown, I really wanted to pick Dooho Choi, but I thought Tavares and his grappling ability may be able to neutralize the South Korean native. However, he wasn't able to do it long enough, as Dooho Choi did not need a lot of strikes to finish this one. Officially, he threw 11 for the night, landed 6 overall, despite getting taken down twice. And looking back at this knockout, it was just a brief moment after a break between the two, and Tavares trying to take him down up against the cage. Dooho Choi was able to take the center, just landed a simple 1-2 combination right down the middle, and it was the right hand of Dooho Choi that knocked Tavares out cold, and the referee had to come in and stop this about 3 minutes into the first round. His third consecutive UFC victory, and all 3 of them have been first-round knockouts. He wants to take on the winner of Cub Swanson and Kawajiri. I think that is a tremendous fight, whoever comes out of that, and I think that would be a very deserving fight for Dooho Choi moving forward, who at that point in time between Kawajiri and Swanson, they should still be in the top 10 or very close to it, at least for sure in the top 15. So I think that's a great fight moving forward for the Korean Superboy, who just has a lot of promise in the division. I mean, he's such a big dude at 5'11" to fight at 145 pounds. And even if his grappling isn't there to the levels like he proved to Tavares, he doesn't need a lot of strikes to put you away. And because of his size, it's going to be tough for other featherweights who aren't as big and strong to take him down. So they're going to exert a lot of energy to try to take this big guy down. And for the moments it is standing, Dooho Choi can put anybody away. I firmly believe that. This dude has some serious power, and if he can, he's still a young kid, so if he can stay at this weight class and keep being able to cut weight safely and healthy, he definitely has a future and is one of the more exciting prospects in any division, and definitely the best prospect coming out of Asia right now for the UFC. The next fight of the evening was the debut of another former Bellator champion in Will Brooks, as he took on longtime UFC veteran and former Ultimate Fighter winner Ross Pearson. And Will Brooks did take this fight on short notice. I thought he performed well. He didn't perform great, but he performed well against a solid veteran in Ross Pearson. I thought the first round, Brooks tied up. Pearson didn't allow him to get too many strikes off. Landed some nice kicks of his own. I thought probably took round 1, outstruck him 24-15, was a little more active in terms of thrown strikes in 48-29. Round 2 was definitely, in my opinion, all Will Brooks, as he outstruck the Brit 53-16 and was successful on one of his, his only takedown attempt. He was successful, was really able to hold Pearson there. In round 3, Pearson had to know that at the very least, it was 1-1, but more likely 2-0. He needed to go, needed to amp it up, and he did. As he threw the most strikes he threw in any round at 73. Only outstruck Brooks by a narrow margin, 45-39. However, he did stuff all 3 of Will Brooks' takedown attempts, and I would have gave Pearson round 3. The judges, however, scored it unanimously for Will Brooks, split decision. I believe one judge did have it. 29-28 for Pearson, but the other 2 had it by that same score for Will Brooks, who gets his UFC debut, of course. Afterwards, he kind of called out Eddie Alvarez, again, another former Bellator champion. I don't think Will Brooks gets Eddie Alvarez next. It was, like I said, a solid performance on 2 weeks' notice against a tough veteran. He gets the victory, but he definitely has to take on somebody in the top 10 before he gets rushed into a UFC title shot, regardless if Eddie Alvarez is still the UFC champion at the time. And I think there are a lot of interesting fights. Again, I mentioned I think Joe Duffy is a possible name out there. I think Khabib is a good matchup. Even coming off a loss, the champion Dos Anjos would be a good matchup as well. So there are definitely a lot of good fights for Will Brooks moving forward, and I think he definitely will be a force in the top 10 for the UFC moving forward. Getting into the 2 Ultimate Fighter contract fights that happened, Michigan's own Amanda Bobby Cooper, unfortunately, wasn't able to handle the grappling game of Tatiana Suarez, submitting to a Darce choke in the first round. Cooper did her best. She had a couple of reversals, but she got taken down 3 times, was trying to constantly work out from under Suarez, who also was able to land 38 strikes to just 4 for Cooper, and was then in a transition period where it looked like Cooper was about to get out. Suarez was able to lock in a Darce choke and submit Cooper just 3:43 into the first round. After the fight, was asked if that was a move she has been working on or if that's a move she likes to go to, and she had mentioned that she had caught Cooper a couple of times during their training sessions there in the Ultimate Fighter House, and said that if there was a moment where she thinks she could get that choke, that being the Darce choke, that she would try to get it, and it proved successful for her. And I think Cooper will be back. I believe this is only her 4th overall MMA fight, and obviously on a stage like this. And Tatiana Suarez is a huge 115 fighter. and officially now 2-2. So that's only her 4th pro fight. Suarez, obviously 5-0, so only 1 more fight overall, but had a lot of wrestling experience in high school and I believe collegiately before she got diagnosed with cancer. So she is a girl that has a lot of experience competing in martial arts, and I think that really helped in this matchup. And I think Cooper, who normally trains again at home, not too far from me here in Brighton, Michigan with Funk Fitness, I think moving down to Dearborn to train with good friends Jason Fisher, Randa Marcos, and Darren Kirkshank at Michigan Top Team, I think would be really good for her to go in there and train with a girl like Randa Marcos, who is a great grappler, and Cooper already has some solid striking skills. Those can be refined with the great striking that Darren Kirkshank and, of course, his father, Dean, can bring to the table with their experience in standing up. I think that would be a great match. And maybe she goes to a bigger camp. Maybe she stays at home in Brighton. But I think even just a couple of times during the week, heading down to Dearborn at Michigan Top Team, I think would be a good move for her. Getting to the other Ultimate Fighter fight, Andrew Sanchez against Khalil Roundtree. Pretty much just a wash right here for Sanchez. I mean, he was the better grappler coming into this fight. All he had to do was take Khalil down, and he would be successful, and that was the case. Only landed 6 takedowns of 12 attempts, so overall, Khalil did a good job of stuffing the takedown, but when it got to the ground, he just had no answer. There was really nothing he could do to get out from under Sanchez, getting outstruck 118-58. And Khalil, again, much like Cooper, a younger fighter taking on a guy who's more experienced, not just slightly bit in MMA, but just in the grappling world, and kind of was expected. I don't know if Josh Sansbury, who fought Corey Hendricks, 2 guys that were also coming close to winning the final there for the Ultimate Fighters light heavyweight division this year. I don't know if they would have fared much better, but that was pretty obvious there, and Sanchez is going to move down to middleweight. He's obviously going to have to add some striking to his game. He looks pretty good as a solid grappler, but he's going to have to evolve into a more well-rounded fighter moving forward. And for Khalil, yeah, he's going to, if people want to stand and throw with him, he's going to be really exciting, but he obviously has a lot of work to do on the ground, because if you can't get the fight back up to what you're best at, then you're going to have a very hard time in the UFC. Main event of the evening, Joanna Jędrzejczyk against Claudia Gadelha. Of course, I had both fighters on before the fight. Obviously, both seemed very confident. Both thought it would be different than the first time around. And early on, it was, as Claudia was really able to dictate the pace of this fight with her grappling. Really did a good job of tying up the champion, getting inside, having the fight be close and inside up against the cage, or Claudia being on top. And that's what really she needed to do to win this fight. Not allow this fight to be at distance, and allow Joanna to get off on her combinations. And early on, Claudia was able to do that to a T, as she took down the champion 3 times inside of the first 2 rounds, and was able to outstrike the champion in those 2 rounds by a margin of 60-41. And to me, easily took those 2 rounds. And then round number 3 happened, and Gadelha did land a takedown, did land 19 of 31 strikes. However, got hit with 45 strikes. That round was close because Gadelha did have some time on top, but obviously Joanna did more damage. In my opinion, I would have gave Joanna the 3rd. In the 4th, it just looked like Gadelha had nothing left in the tank, that she had already maxed out after those first 15 minutes, and Joanna just lit up the Brazilian 69-11 in landed strikes. And looking at the number of thrown, 109-38, and that's what she's known for, throwing a lot of punches. For every 1 you throw, she's going to answer back with 5. In the 5th round, Claudia was hanging in there. She was hanging tough. Obviously, Joanna probably tired as well heading into that 5th round. Her striking went down a little bit, 79 thrown, however, was still able to land 39, just 11 of 30 for Gadelha, who tried 3 more takedowns, got shut down on all of them, and would have gave Joanna that round as well. And in my opinion, a good comeback after losing those first 2 rounds, for her to come back and win the next three, prove that she was the champion, and prove that she was the best fighter in the world at 115 pounds. And it was a valiant effort by Claudia. It was definitely another close fight. It definitely was a war. Claudia said be ready for a war, and it definitely was. Joanna had to dig down deep to not get finished or submitted in those first two rounds, and was able to keep on coming and showed the true heart of a champion that she is, and able to come out with another victory. And looking forward, I'm not sure where Gadelha goes from here. Of course, there's talk from several UFC fighters about their want for a women's 125-pound division. I think Claudia would factor in that division very well, could be a champion in that division. As far as where she goes at 115, I'm not sure. Obviously, she just went through a 25-minute war with Joanna. She said after the fight she was going to take some time and teach some classes up at her gym there in Pennsylvania with our good friend AJ Hiller. And I'm sure we'll probably hear in the next week or two maybe what her plans are possibly for a next opponent. As far as Joanna's next opponent, I believe the winner of Karolina Kowalkiewicz and Rose Namajunas is probably what's next for her. That's coming up. Rose, in my opinion, could have gotten a shot at the title following her win over Tecia Torres, but kind of with this whole Ultimate Fighter thing, and obviously her did have some time off following her title loss in December 2014, not fighting again until October 2015. It kind of made sense maybe for her to get another fight in there. And either way, it bodes well because you have Rose Namajunas, who would be coming off 4 consecutive victories since fighting for the inaugural bout for the strawweight division, being the likes of Kowalkiewicz, Paige Van Zandt, and Tecia Torres, and now current Invicta strawweight champion in Angela Hill. That win, I think, looks a lot bigger than it did back in October of last year. And if Karolina wins, she's 3-0 in the UFC. She's undefeated overall in her career, and also she's a great Polish kickboxer as well. So it's a great matchup. I think either way it goes, and I'm assuming that will be sometime later this year. Joanna expressed her desire to fight at Madison Square Garden in November. Looking at the timing, that should work out for the winner of Rose and Karolina if all things go well. If it doesn't, they either would have to push back her fight or come up with a new contender. But if it doesn't happen at Madison Square Garden, I wouldn't be surprised if she gets thrown in on as a co-main event possibly for the New Year's Eve card around that area, or they usually do a big national Fox show in December, and I think she could be the main event of that to be on Fox as well. So we'll see, but a great fight and great performance by the champion Joanna. Let's get to what was the crown jewel of International Fight Week for 2016, the spectacle that was UFC 200 at the brand new T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. Had a record-setting $10.7 million live gate for UFC 200. An incredible night of fights, which ultimately ended with having 10 former or current UFC champions fight on the card, which as of right now is a record for most fighting on one event. And really, you can make a case 11 if you count Takanori Gomi's Pride Championships as well. And looking over this completely stacked card, great from top to bottom. I watched every single fight. And speaking of Takanori Gomi, if this is indeed the last time Takanori Gomi will lace up the gloves there for the UFC, it's been a tremendous career. You are definitely one of the legends of the sport. You will be in the UFC Hall of Fame this day. Maybe he gets released, maybe he just outright retires, but I think it's time. You had a great career. You have nothing left to prove, and following another first-round knockout, I'm not sure how safe it is for you to fight moving forward. So if you can understand this Takanori, I think it's time to hang it up. And for Jim Miller, beat a legend, possibly for the last time. So good on Jim Miller. He's a solid veteran. He's the guy that knows how to grapple. He knows how to. He's a tough guy, and that's not a bad way to go out, especially fighting on a spectacle that was UFC 200. So if it is the last time we see Takanori Gomi, I give you a salute as one of my favorite fighters to watch ever. Gegard Mousasi, taking on a guy, Thiago Santos, who is a good up-and-coming guy in this division, but not ready for Gegard Mousasi, especially on short notice. Mousasi was pretty much all over him from the start, gets the knockout, 4:32 into the first round. And then, boy, a guy that also may have to consider hanging out, Diego Sanchez, a guy that has had one of the best chins, maybe next to a guy we saw fight on Thursday, in Roy Nelson, was able to get knocked out in the first round by Joe Lazone at the 126 marker. Just got caught early, and Diego Sanchez was the first Ultimate fighter. That was back in 2005, and obviously he was even fighting before then. So this dude's been fighting for 12 years. He's the only guy, as far as I know, still active in any mixed martial arts organization from the first season of The Ultimate Fighter. So, I mean, he's had a great career. I think definitely will probably be in the UFC Hall of Fame as well. But, getting knocked out like that, I think that's a sign. And then he had that huge weight cut to 45 against Lamas in a fight. I'm not sure really how much, he has left in the tank. So, good on Joe Lazone. That's a nice bounce back win for him after he lost his last fight. I believe that was because he beat Gomi, and then I think he had a loss in between there. Yeah, he lost to Evan Dunham back at the Ultimate Fighter 22 finale. Actually, we had him on the show before that fight. So, nice bounce back for Joe. Another of the night bonus for him knocking out Diego Sanchez. So, yeah, good performance by Joe, but I think it also may be time for Diego to go. Looking at the undercard real quickly, good performance by TJ Dillashaw. I thought Rafael Asunciao did a lot better than I thought, considering the almost 2-year layoff he has had. It just seemed like he was just not as quick to the punch. I think he was just a tad bit slower, and I think that could be the rust. And he was able to take the shots from Dillashaw. I don't think Dillashaw did anything crazy or, to me, overly dominate. To me, he won every single round, but Asunciao hung on there, and it definitely was a tough fight. It was a lot more, to me, decisive for either gentleman than the first matchup. TJ Dillashaw definitely won. I think Asunciao will be back. I mean, after the long layoff like that and injuries that he had, to take on a guy who's hungry to get his championship belt back in a 3-round fight when this dude's been fighting 5-round fights for the last year or so. I thought he hung in there admirably. I think having a tune-up fight before taking on a guy like caliber of TJ Dillashaw, I think would have greatly benefited Asunciao, but now he'll probably have that opportunity to go back, take on someone a little lower ranked to get his feet out from under him, and then I think, or his feet back under him, I should say, and I will see him right back in the top 5 of this division, knocking on the door of the title shot once again. Sage Northcutt, solid performance against the guy that knew what he needed to do there in Enrique Marin, knew he had to tie up the karate stylist in Sage Northcutt, was able to do that for the most part. Again, Sage didn't really talk much about his opponent's skill set, didn't really say he was training specifically for Marin. I don't know if that was necessarily a mistake, but Marin definitely had him in some very tough spots, especially in that second round with the Kimura attempt in the armbar. I don't know how Sage got out of that armbar. I think that was just pure toughness. As far as I can tell, it didn't look like he had any serious injury done to that arm. Was able to come back in round 3 while really getting pressured with the takedowns of Marin, who really put those on strong in the 3rd round, attempting 7 takedowns of the round, only successful on 2 of them. Sage did a good job trying to land damage when he could, outstriking the Spaniard 40-11. I think cut open the Spaniard at one point in the round with those kind of call them the Travis Brown elbows there to the side of the head with his back up against the cage while Marin's trying for a double leg. And I think that kind of swayed the judges, the fact that while Marin, was pushing the pace with the takedowns, I mean, he only landed 11 strikes in that final frame. Sage threw 51, and I think that attempts there of the damage is what gave Sage this fight, who overall outstruck the Spaniard 106-26. However, Marin did land 4 of 10 takedowns. Sage tried a couple of his own, was not successful at all. Would have gave Sage round 1 and 3 with Marin, obviously with those submissions taking round 2. And obviously, as Joe Rogan was saying, he's learning the game before our eyes. This was only his 8th, I believe, 9th fight overall in mixed martial arts. He's 20 years old. So obviously coming from a karate and striking heavy background, the grappling game is still what's going to be new to him. So that's where people are going to really test him. And this was another fight he got tested in that category. Obviously, he came out of it well in the Pfister fight, got the submission, didn't fare well in the Barberina fight, but this one was able to hang tough. And I think if there's any question about this kid's toughness, I think he answered it. I mean, many people would have tapped to that armbar. Not only did he have a straight, he then tucked it in, did Marin underneath the armpit to increase the maximum pressure. I've been in that position doing some grappling. I put people in that position, and I know it hurts. That is a painful position to be in, especially with a dude that actually is a fighter, not just messing around with your friends. So I got to imagine that hurt a ton, and for him to tough through it like that, I think is incredible. He showed great toughness, survived through adversity, was able to get the victory, and I hope for Sage that he takes on a little better opponent. I feel the UFC may be coddling him a little bit, and with good reason. They have a kid that has potential star power and could be a champion for many years in their organization, but I think a true learning experience is going through defeat. You know what to work on, you know what to expect, and you know what people are going to attack you with. And I think even though this was a win for him, he went through adversity, and I think that's a good thing. I think there's a lot of good quality fights out there for him. I know he lost, but I think he's still a great prospect as well in the Australian Jake Matthews. I think would be a pretty entertaining fight. Not Will Brooks or probably not Joe Duffy. I don't think that fight would probably materialize, but I'm trying to scratch my head here for some other young up-and-coming one. John McDessie had a performance on Thursday night I thought was pretty solid. That guy is a solid veteran. Also, even though he's coming off loss, I thought in that same fight against McDessie, I thought Mehdi Baghdad had a really excellent performance as well. Also a guy that likes to strike. So I think they can go a couple different ways, but I think they can, no offense to Marin, he had a great performance, but I think they can get Sage someone maybe a little bit higher and really test this kid. We've had him on the show twice now. I think he's a good kid, super nice guy. And I look forward to watching him grow for the rest of his career. To cap off the undercard, of course, Johnny Hendricks fought Calvin Gastelum. I think Hendricks is done at 170 pounds. I don't think his body can handle the cut. Of course, this is now in a USADA-regulated UFC. He can't probably take a lot of the same supplements that he was used to before. Obviously, he can't use the IV anymore to try to rehydrate, and I just don't think his body can do it. It can't do it anymore, and I think that just sucks the energy out of him, a guy that's known for throwing big, powerful punches that takes a lot of energy out of you trying to throw strikes like that. And I think it really affected Hendricks, who, if you look back at his Robbie Lawler fights, a guy that went through 5 rounds good, had solid striking, good kicks, could move forward, eat the shots from Robbie Lawler, still land some takedowns. And to me, you saw shades of his former championship self, but for the most part, I thought his footwork was not good. He was not really keeping his head off the center line. He was allowing Gastelum to walk him down and keep up his feet and back up against the cage. And he was really doing nothing defensively to stop Gastelum moving forward and just landing solid combinations. I mean, Gastelum wasn't throwing wide looping, powerful bombs or fighting from a weird unorthodox angle or anything. I mean, he was coming forward just landing a lot of straight 1-2s, solid hooks. Some kicks were mixed in there as well. Hendricks did land a takedown. He had it briefly in round number 2, and I think that may have been the only round he could have gave the former champion. But the rest of the fight, he was getting outstruck. In rounds 1, he got outstruck 55-22. Round 3, 50-36. He outstruck Gastelum 32-29 with that takedown. Again, I probably would have gave him round 2. But he was doing nothing to make Gastelum afraid. 5 takedowns overall isn't a lot, especially for a guy who has had, I think up to 10 takedowns in one fight. That's not a lot for him to try 5 takedowns. Didn't try any in the first round, which kind of boggles my mind, especially when he got outstruck by 33 and in thrown strikes 96-39 in favor of Gastelum. I don't know. It's not the same Johnny Hendricks that I remember seeing. For Gastelum, huge win for him. It looks like, conversely, he's figured out this weight cut at 170 pounds. He knows what to do to make that weight, and still be able to fight effectively and fight the way that he wants to fight. And huge win for him. He moves right back up in the ratings after losing to Neil Magny not too long ago. So looking forward to Gastelum moving forward. But for Johnny Hendricks, I don't think he should retire. I still think that he has something left in the tank, but he's going to either have to drastically change his lifestyle to fight at 170, or he's just going to have to fight at 185. And I think fighting at 185, even being a shorter guy, I think is going to be better for him moving forward. Not just as far as a career move, but as far as just being able to live your life normally later on. I think that's a move he has to make. Julianna Pena and Zingano ended the undercard portion on FS1 in the women's bantamweight division. Interesting fight. A lot of people were kind of down on this fight, saying it wasn't very good, it was kind of boring, but I thought it was a solid fight. I thought Kat Zingano, I would have gave her round one. She was able to land a takedown. There were some reversals. Pena did do more damage, outstruck Kat 53-16, but I thought Kat was on top more, was controlling the fight. Round number 2 a little closer, as Zingano was able to land 2 takedowns, but towards the end, Pena was able to reverse it, land some damage, get on top of her own, outstriking Kat 25-5. I think that was a close round, but I think Pena did more with her time in control than Kat did. So I would have gave the Venezuelan Vixen the second round, and then round 3, all Julianna Pena. She was able to get a takedown very early in the round and pretty much stay on top of there and just dominate Zingano, who had really didn't do anything to get out from under Pena. Got outstruck 51-2. Overall, looking at these numbers, 129-23 in terms of total strikes landed for Pena. 3 of 4 on takedowns for Zingano, just 1 of 2 for Pena. But Pena proved that she has an excellent top game. That if she gets on top of you, even if you're somebody the caliber jiu-jitsu fighter like Kat Zingano, you're going to have a tough time trying to throw up a submission or just get out from under this girl. And if she can get you down, good luck trying to get back up and not get finished. And while this wasn't a finish, it wasn't the most exciting performance, beating a girl like Kat Zingano pretty much at her own game, grappling and being in close in jiu-jitsu, I thought Pena performed admirably. Looking at the scorecards, 29-28 on all 3 scorecards for Pena to win by unanimous decision. And, of course, she's talking about wanting to fight for a title next. She'll hold out if she doesn't get the title shot. I think she puts herself in line for one, but Holly Holm against Shevchenko, I think, has a lot to do with this picture, because Shevchenko, after that first round against Amanda Nunes, you can make a case that she won the second and third round against the now UFC champion, which we'll get to in a bit. So if Holly Holm has a bad performance, or conversely a good performance, and really puts it to Shevchenko, who had, I thought, an overall solid performance against the now champion, I think Holm may actually leapfrog Pena in the rankings and get a shot at Nunes before Pena does. And if that ends up being the case, Miesha Tate is friends with Julianna Pena, so I don't know if a non-title fight they would actually be willing to fight each other. I think maybe they would only fight if it was for the title. So if that's the case, puts her in an interesting position where, like she said, she may either hold out, so to speak, or maybe is forced to sit out because Holm may play into the picture first. Ronda Rousey, who knows if she is coming back or when she's coming back. Reports are now not until early 2017. So I think at least for the immediate future, you can kind of count her out of the picture. If Holm doesn't get the shot and Pena does indeed get Nunes, I think a Holm-Tate rematch is probably what would happen. Sarah McMahon just recently beat Jessica Ai, so she kind of maybe gets another mini boost here in the rankings. So that could be someone possibly that factors in. And if Shevchenko, even if she loses, but it makes it a close fight, that could be someone Pena to be taking on. Obviously, shooting up the rankings, she had a big win over Betch Gadelha back in April, is Raquel Pennington, who was one of the competitors of Julianna Pena's season there of the Ultimate Fighter, which she won. So I think that would even be a solid matchup for Pena if she does not get the title next. Looking at the main card, Travis Brown against Cain Velasquez. What a performance by Cain. I expected him to win, but boy, his striking, that's the best I've ever seen Kane look in striking. I mean, to only attempt 3 takedowns and only land one of them, you would have thought Travis Brown was doing a good job of landing strikes, but that was not the case. I think the threat of the takedown by Velasquez made Brown really apprehensive to throw anything serious in the fear of getting caught or getting tied up by the former champion Velasquez. And Kane, as a result, was really able to kind of be loose with his striking, really let things go. And I think working with kickboxers like Chai Perry as well as Rico Verhoeven, I think really has helped him. I mean, he landed a couple of spinning back kicks to the head that were on point. I mean, not sloppy, slow, heavyweight moving things. I mean, these were crisp and on point moves you didn't think Cain Velasquez would be capable of. I mean, he just put it right to Travis Brown. I mean, 90-6 in terms of land strikes. Didn't allow Travis Brown room to breathe. Very dominant performance. I think does put himself in line for a UFC title shot. Of course, on the undercard of the heavyweight title fight coming up next, Stipe Miocic and Alistair Overeem, is Fabricio Verdum and Ben Rothwell. The winner of that fight could very well factor in to what's next for the heavyweight division. Also, and the fact Brock Lesnar, who we'll get to in just a second, he called out Cain Velasquez, of course, who owns a win over Brock Lesnar and beat him for the heavyweight championship a few years ago. So that, I think, is also an intriguing fight. And I really think those are the two options for Velasquez. He either gets a shot at the title against the winner of Stipe Overeem, Brock Lesnar, because I really think that's it. Because if he doesn't get the title shot and Verdum or Rothwell does, he's not going to face Andre Arlovski, I don't think, who's now coming off of 2 losses. I don't think they're going to schedule a 4th fight with Junior Dos Santos. And Brock Lesnar, of course, has a WWE obligation in August. He said, we'll see. I honestly think he's going to come back again. I don't think this was a one-off fight. I think he had so much fun in there. He loved competing. I feel like he's going to come back again. I really do. I really do. And I think a fight against Cain Velasquez later this year would be huge, and I think would be an excellent fight. Jose Aldo against Frankie Edgar, interim featherweight championship on the line. And after a very close first round between these two gentlemen, which saw the striking numbers absolutely even at 14 landed apiece, 0 for 1 in takedowns, I thought Aldo was starting to do the better of Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar was a lot busier fighter if you look at total strikes thrown, 267 to 193, but they were dead even and landed strikes at 81. But also you have to add in the fact that Aldo stopped all 11 of Frankie Edgar's takedown attempts, and I think you can make a case that Aldo won rounds 2 through 5. I think the first round he was definitely busier, did try for that takedown. But I think in rounds 2 through 5 after that first round, I think Aldo started to catch the timing. He caught what Edgar was doing. He was able to avoid the big shots, stop the takedown, and I thought countered effectively well. And I think Edgar was maybe thrown off by the countering ability. He's a pretty good counter striker. He really can work people down with his footwork and movement. He's really fast himself. He can kind of use that to his advantage in a lot of cases, but it seemed like Aldo had everything figured out. There was nothing that Frankie Edgar was doing that was surprising Aldo, that was making him worry. He didn't worry about the power. He didn't worry about the volume. He wasn't worried about the takedowns. And he just stopped down everything Frankie Edgar can do. And Frankie Edgar is such a tough competitor. He has the heart of a champion. He's a guy that's always going to be able to move forward. He's going to be in every single fight he's in. But he couldn't do anything to throw Jose Aldo off his game. And I think the lack of power also had a lot to do with this, because Aldo really had no fear. He could sit back knowing that there wasn't anything Edgar was going to throw at him that was going to hurt him. And I think that's a big thing in this fight. And after that first round, Aldo, I think, just took over and just really put on maybe the best performance of his career. I think maybe even better so than the first time he fought Frankie Edgar. It showed a guy that if he had trouble making weight, or he's talked about wanting to move up to 55, I thought he did great for 25 minutes against a dude the caliber of Frankie Edgar. To beat him again, I think is awfully impressive, and I think definitely deserves another shot at Conor McGregor with this victory. And I think that fight will be a lot different this second time around. I think he got caught up in the emotion and the trash talk of Conor McGregor rushed and got caught And if we see the Jose Aldo we saw on Saturday night, it's going to be a lot different fight. I don't know if he wins, but it's definitely not going to end in 13 seconds. I think I can say that pretty safely. Daniel Cormier against Anderson Silva. Of course, short notice fight for Anderson Silva, just 2 days against the light heavyweight champion. Was a non-title fight, but the UFC assured the former middleweight champion that if he was able to defeat Daniel Cormier in a 3-round affair, he could take a pick at his division that he would like a title shot in, either the light heavyweight division, which he has fought in a couple times now, including this one, or, of course, his former division in the middleweight division. And fans were upset with DC, but what do you expect? He's not going to stand and trade with Anderson Silva, who knew his only chance. DC is an analyst on Fox Sports. He knows what Anderson Silva is capable of. He knows how to break down fights. He knows what to do against guys that are a great strike. He takes them down on the ground. Landed 1 takedown every round, pretty much controlled with the rest from there. Outstruck the Brazilian 153-30. Silva had a couple of flashes on the feet, especially in the 3rd round, where it looked like he hurt Cormier with a shot to the body. I mean, Silva fought admirably. He did a great job of, to me, controlling the guard. Didn't really get hit with anything too solid. I thought did well, but again, you can't lay on your back for 3 to 4 minutes and expect to win. And on the feet, yeah, he did hurt him with that body shot a little bit, but Cormier's fought some big dudes before him. He used to fight at heavyweight, and Silva now at 41 years old, Cormier was probably going to be able to take just about everything that Silva went in him. Fans were saying, oh, he should have stood up with them and whatnot. And at the end of the day, Daniel Cormier is trying to go out there and win. And why risk, losing just to make people happy and do it? I mean, he fought what he was going to fight. I mean, to think anything different of Daniel Cormier, I think is absurd, because Daniel Cormier is a wrestler. He's going to do what he does best, and that's take people to the ground and try to punch him in the face. And Silva did his best to try to neutralize that. Could. And, he still showed that he's a strong guy, despite being the age he is. In the last couple of fights, obviously not going his way. The injury, the performance-enhancing drugs thing, the 2 days notice thing. And I'm looking forward to Anderson Silva fighting next. I think that he should factor in for the Madison Square Garden card. I don't know who would be against. I don't know if it would be Luke Rockhold, another fight with Chris Weidman. I think Uriah Hall, again, was supposed to fight him down in Brazil in May. I still think that would be an excellent fight, considering Uriah Hall is a native of New York. So a lot of Anderson Silva fights anyone. It's going to be an intriguing matchup. So I'm looking forward to whatever he wants to do. And I still think if there was any doubt after that crazy situation that happened with Michael Bisping, I think Anderson Silva still has it, and I still shows the desire to compete in mixed martial arts and for the UFC. Co-main events of the evening in the heavyweight division, as Brock Lesnar came back after nearly 5 years away from the sport to take on former K1 world champion and current top 10 ranked heavyweight in Mark Hunt. Fight pretty much went how I expected it. Lesnar was really, besides round 2, where Lesnar was 0 for 4 on all his takedowns, he dominated rounds 1 and 3. Landed 3 takedowns in round 1, just 1 in round 3, but was able to control the majority of that round. Could have gave him a 10-8 possibly, as he outstruck the Australian 103-25 in that 3rd round. Was close to finishing, I think, Hunt in the 1st and in the 3rd round. Round 2, I think maybe that initial adrenaline dump maybe hit Lesnar. Obviously, he worked a lot for those 3 takedowns, and I think maybe kind of affected him a little bit, and maybe Hunt got his 2nd win. Kind of happened at the same time, so I would have gave Hunt round 2. Hunt performed admirably against a guy that is just an absolute beast, freak athlete, still a tremendous wrestler, and even being this sport away, even being this far away from the sport for so long, able to come back, beat a guy like Mark Hunt, and still look pretty close to the guy we remember being the UFC champion for a bit. Brock Lesnar, I think, I mentioned it earlier when I was talking about Cain Velasquez, I think he will fight again. I think he's got the itch now. This win, I think it was coming in a one-off fight, but I think he was in there actually competing, enjoying himself, having fun. Sure, the money's not bad either, but this is a guy who's made a lot of money in his career, not just with the UFC, but with the WWE. So I think as both companies allow him to do both, and I think that will be the case. I think I don't see any reason why it shouldn't happen, but I think he's going to be back. I think if he would have gotten in there, either got finished quickly or just looked awful and it was just a barely got a win or something, maybe he would have been like, that's it. But he looked good. Looked like he could have won another round or two, I think, actually. Again, fought a tough dude. Didn't get hit with anything too solid. Took him out of his game plan. I think Brock Lesnar will be back. I really do. I think he got that itch, and of course, the UFC would love to have him back too, because almost every card that he's on goes over 1 million pay-per-view buys. So the UFC, I think, would also love Brock Lesnar back, especially with selling the company. They're looking to make money, and if they can start getting some return on that investment by having a guy like Brock Lesnar fight a few more times, the new owners, I think, are going to be very happy as well. Main event of the evening, Amanda Nunes took on Miesha Tate for the Women's Bantamweight Championship of the World. And Amanda Nunes, maybe next to former champion Ronda Rousey, the first round is what she's the best at. She's going to max out in the first round, and if you can get past that, you have a chance to beat her. And Miesha Tate was not able to do that. She was not able to get past the first round against Amanda Nunes, who was hit early. It looked like Tate had her nose broken, possibly in a couple spots. I think after that, she was not able to recover. She tried a couple of takedowns. Nunes, who is a judo and jiu-jitsu black belt, again in the first round, very tough person to try to take down. Miesha Tate got shut down. Nunes was all over pretty much from start to the eventual finish, 3 minutes and 16 seconds, officially by rear naked choke. And some people didn't like Nunes getting the shot, thought she wasn't ready, thought that she can't handle going into the championship rounds. But all that's irrelevant, because if you can put people away in the first round, it doesn't matter whether or not you're competitive or can handle going 15, 20, 25 minutes. And that's what she excels at. And if she takes out people in the first round, that never has to be a question. And that's what she did against Miesha Tate. She made it a non-issue. She's just a big and powerful woman, and she imposed her will on Miesha Tate and did allow her to drag this fight into deeper waters, which I think Tate would have had the advantage, and became the UFC champion of the world. Incredible performance. Again, I think speaking earlier on with Julianna Pena and Kat Zingano, I think Pena is a likely possibility. I think the winner of Holm and Shevchenko is a possibility. So that's what I think is next on the horizon there for Amanda Nunes, who, after a quick fight, really the fight against Holly Holm is coming up next Saturday, July 23rd in Chicago. So she'll know fairly soon whether it's Holm or Shevchenko. And Pena, despite a 3-round fight, I don't think took that much damage. I think the overall strike, she got hit 30 times from Zingano. So I think that I don't know if she'll factor into Madison Square Garden. Probably another co-main event spot, possibly a Fox Sports main event there for December. But she's just kind of a waiting game and just can kind of enjoy this victory until a contender emerges here for her. UFC will hit South Dakota for the first time on Wednesday, July 13th, with a 6-fight main card starting on Fox Sports 1 at 9 p.m. Eastern. Once again, I am Jim Graham, continuing this jam-packed show, looking over the 6-fight main card for UFC Fight Night 91, starting first with our good friend of the show, Luis Smolka, as he battles fellow top 15 flyweight fighter in Ben 10, a.k.a. Ben Nguyen. Ben Nguyen, one of the rising stars here in this division, 14-5 overall in his career. Looking at Smolka, 10-1. Ben Nguyen is a guy that, in the flyweight division, a lot of people are excited for. Has finished 12 of his 14 fights by finish, with 8 of them coming by knockout. Has not lost a fight since 2010, and that was back in August of 2010, so it's been nearly 6 years since Ben Nguyen has lost. So far in the UFC, 2-0, defeating the likes of Ryan Benoit and Alpen Ozkilik, finishing both those gentlemen, and his last fight taking on Benoit, submitting him in the first round at the 235 marker. Looking at our good friend Luis Smolka, the Hawaiian has been very excellent since losing his fight to Chris Carriezal. That was back in May of 2014. Since then has rattled off 3 consecutive victories, including the biggest being a main event victory over Patrick Houlihan, submitting him in the second round in his home country of Ireland. And that was a huge win for Luis. The winner of this fight, I don't know if they get a title shot, but they're definitely starting to knock on the door here in the flyweight division ruled by Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. And I think grappling-wise, I think Smolka does have good submissions, but in the Houlihan fight, he did get taken down. I think that can be an area that Ben Nguyen can have success in. Standing up, I think very few have been able to stand up with Luis Smolka for any length of time. Really, his lone loss so far in his career and in the UFC has been to a guy that was able to pressure him with grappling, that being Chris Carriezal. So I think Ben Nguyen is going to have to do that, but he's going to have to be smart, because I think Smolka is starting to learn how to fight off his back, how to get back up in his feet and threaten with submissions. So if it stays standing, he's going to have his work cut out for him, that being Ben Nguyen. So I think both guys are very capable of finishing each other, and I actually expect a finish in this fight. But for Ben Nguyen, he's really going to have to work hard for the takedown and try to keep this fight in close, because I think that's how you're going to have success against a guy that's going to be a little taller and a little longer in the height and reach there in Luis Smolka. Next fight of the evening will be in the welterweight division, as Keith Nakamura will take on longtime veteran Kyle Noke. Looking at Nakamura, he is coming off a fight against a top prospect there in Tom Breeze. And while he didn't win the fight, he made it close. I think closer than a lot of people expected against the guy who's been knocking dudes out left and right in Tom Breeze. So far, just 1-1 in his career. Before the fight against Breeze, I believe that was for the TUF China contract fight, defeating Jinglang Li back in September of 2015, submitting him in the third round. Like I said, had an okay performance against Tom Breeze. Longtime veteran of the sport, 31-7, has 16 of 31 victories by submission. Has only been finished twice in his career, and has not been finished since September of 2011. That was against Ahiro Moriyama. So he's 32, tough guy, but Kyle Noke is a guy that doesn't have as much fight experience as Nakamura, but has a lot more UFC experience than his Japanese counterpart. And I think that will bode well for Kyle Noke, who I think in the welterweight division, despite, I believe his first fight in the welterweight division would have been against Charlie Brenneman back in September of 2012. Of course, had some time away with injuries, came back, coached against Patrick Cote, lost the fight, but competitive fight. Since has gone on a run of 2-1, with his most notable one coming over Peter Sabata, knocking him out in the first round, UFC 193. Had a tough loss to Alex Morano back at UFC 195. Slightly less fight experience. 22-8-1 is Australia's Kyle Noke. Has finished 16 of his 22 professional wins, 8 by knockout and 8 by submission. I don't know. Nakamura is a solid grappler. I think he has a chance to maybe out-grapple Noke, but I think Noke's solid in that category. Now with Jackson's Winklejohn, they're going to have a good game plan for him. I think he'll be able to keep this fight standing. I think that he's the better striker, and I think Nakamura is going to have a tough time dealing with Kyle Noke. And I just think the guys Kyle Noke has fought in his career, and the guys Noke's even trained with, are not the caliber of guys that Nakamura's been facing and training with. So I think Nakamura, I don't think he'll get finished. I think he can hang through this fight, but I think he'll have a tough time dealing with Kyle Noke. Looking at the next fight of the evening, it will be in the heavyweight division, as Alexei Olenek will take on Daniel Olomanzik. That's me at Poland versus Russia here in Sioux Falls. Looking at these two massive dudes, Olenek 50-9 with one draw, 60 professional fights. I think his most notable win is defeating Jared Rochold. That was back in November of 2014, knocking out Rochold in the first round. He also holds a victory over Anthony Hamilton. That was back in 2014. He has not fought in roughly 18 months. That's a long layoff for a guy that's now 39 years old, has 40 of 50 wins by submission. He's fought all over the world. I think that he's fought in some of the best in the world as well. And I don't know. This is an interesting fight because you got a guy who definitely is a good fighter, a solid fighter, has beaten a lot of dudes, has a lot of fight experience. Almost. Let's see, I think Olenek is officially listed at, or Olomanzik is 18-5-1, so nearly 3 times as many fights does Alexei have over his Polish counterpart. And for Olomanzik, obviously, I think he's been a little more active than his now 15th ranked opponent in Alexei. And looking at his tenure so far in the UFC, again fighting out of Warsaw, Poland. So far in the UFC, started off pretty bad, but he's been able to come back and get victories over Zingano at the fight night in London early this year, and also took on Chris De La Roca, defeating him in July of last year, winning by majority decision in February, knocking out De La Roca in the first round back in June. Started out his career with some losses against Jared Rochold and Anthony Hamilton, obviously guys that Olenek has fought and defeated, and did win his debut back in 2013 against Nandor Guelmino, knocking him out. So he's actually been in the UFC for 3 years, 3-2 overall. I don't know. I really don't know how this fight's gonna play out. I think Alexei, even with the layoff, I mean, he's been fighting for so long. I don't think you have 60 fights and get ring rest. He's been even with the layoff like that. So I think he's going to be able to out-grapple the man from Poland, probably get a finish. I haven't seen too much excitement from Daniel to really say he can win either way. I mean, he's never been finished in his career, so I think getting finished would be nice for Olenek, who I think, despite at 39, I think still has some left in the tank here. And so this is either going to be a really exciting quick finish, or it's going to be a really boring, I think, 3-round fight. I think this is an interesting fight for South Dakota here. Next fight of the evening in the middleweight division is Tim Bosch takes on Josh Salmon. Salmon got caught up in the grappling ability that was the barn camp, Tamden McRory, in his last fight, and I think if Tim Bosch is able to stay on and stay close to Josh Salmon, I think he can implement a similar game plan and get a victory. But if it stays standing, Josh Salmon, man, he has some really good kicks. I think he's developed into a solid stand-up fighter. He's going to be the taller guy. He's going to be the longer guy. And if he can keep his distance away for Tim Bosch, I think he can get a knockout. Bosch has been knocked out several times over his last couple fights. So he's not as durable as he once was. He still is a strong guy for this division. You got to look out for him in the clinch and on top. But if Salmon can either avoid the takedown or get back up quickly from a takedown from Bosch, I think he is the better stand-up fighter, could possibly get a knockout. But if he gets caught up and is not able to get out from under Tim Bosch, it could be a long night for Josh Salmon. As you will hear in just a few minutes, Tony Ferguson joined me on the program to talk about his co-main event fight against Landau Vannata. Of course, Tony Ferguson was originally supposed to be taking on Michael Chiesa in the main event of this card here in Sioux Falls. However, Chiesa had to drop out due to injury. Vannata will be coming in, making his UFC debut, overall 8-0 in his career. Has fought previously at 145 pounds, so El Kukui looks to be a much bigger and stronger guy in this fight. Obviously, he has fought way better competition, has nearly 3 times as much fight experience as his opponent, and I asked him whether he thought this was a dangerous fight, taking on, a lower ranked guy. What would that do if he lost or had a bad performance? And he says sometimes you can't control your performance, and you'll kind of hear more talk about it. But he didn't seem too worried about taking on a guy that has nothing to lose. He seems very confident in his abilities, and he should be. I mean, he's on an overall 7-fight win streak. If he wins this, would be 8 in a row, and arguably the UFC's toughest division being the lightweight division. He's ranked number 3 in the world in this weight class, and even though he's not taking on another top 10 opponent like he would be in Michael Chiesa, or of course he was supposed to take on a guy like Khabib Nurmagomedov back in April, I think if he gets this victory and gets his 8th in a row, and especially if he does it, finishes Vannata, quickly, I think he should get a shot at the UFC title. I really do, and he seems confident that 8 wins in a row would be enough, but he seemed confident that guys don't want a part of him, so he'll kind of take what the UFC gets him. But I think winning the way he has, only losing once overall in the whole entire time he's been in the UFC, which has been quite a few years now, over 5 years, I think it's time for El Cucuy to get a title shot, and it's not his fault that Michael Chiesa had to pull out. And of course, it is unfortunate. I think if he would have been able to compete and defeat Khabib, he probably wouldn't have even had to take this fight here at Sioux Falls. But takes another fight. His opponent drops out. I think Khabib, who was on a very long layoff before their scheduled bout in April, was able to compete and defeat a late injured opponent. I think now that Dos Anjos is no longer champion, there's not that feather of him, having a win against the current champion. I actually think Khabib may fight Rafael Dos Anjos later this year for a #1 contender, and if Ferguson can get by Vannata, I think Tony Ferguson will shoot up in the rankings and possibly get a shot at Eddie Alvarez. The only other factor could be, and again, he owns a victory over this guy, Edson Barboza, is Barboza's fight against Gilbert Melendez. I think that's also a fight to look out for as well, and that's coming up, I believe, is the co-main event to Holly Holm's fight in Chicago next Saturday. So this is a big fight for Tony Ferguson because he needs to get a win to get a title shot. So taking on a guy that has nothing to lose is always a dangerous thing. This guy has 7 of his 8 wins by finish, so this is a guy that definitely is a solid prospect, but he's definitely not the level of Tony Ferguson. The new main event of the evening will be a matchup in the bantamweight division, as former title contender Michael McDonald will take on John Lineker. Of course, we've had Michael on the show. He came back after a nearly 3-year layoff due to a series of hand injuries. Was able to return last year, or actually, technically earlier this year at UFC 195. Was able to get a victory over Masanori Kanehara, submitting his opponent in the 2nd round and winning a Performance of the Night bonus victory. And in this fight, John Lineker is a guy that at bantamweight does not have to worry about weight cutting as much, doesn't have to worry about trying to pace himself and conditioning and all that, and I think really is more dangerous because he can kind of let his hands go. However, he gives up a lot of size, and this is a guy that is one of the bigger bantamweights in the division, as he will be 6 inches taller, Will McDonald, than Lineker. Will have an overall 3-inch reach with the arms, and the UFC website also notes a 3-inch advantage in leg reach, which is the thing they're starting to do now as well. So from that standpoint, he's going to have a tough time possibly finding the chin of Michael McDonald. But if he can certainly knock out the American in Michael McDonald. Grappling-wise, John's a decent grappler. I wouldn't say he's amazing at submissions, decent top game. But I think after his adversity with Kanehara, I think Michael McDonald has really developed that part of his game. I think is a slick guy in his own right with grappling, as a guy that I think, if that goes his way, I think could possibly submit John Lineker. And I just think even despite the move up in weight class that Lineker's now finding out he doesn't worry about his conditioning as much, I would still say McDonald has the better conditioning of this two. And if this thing goes into the 3rd, 4th, and even a 5th round, I would side with Michael McDonald. So I think it's going to be a fun fight. I expect to finish, and I think considering that Chiesa dropped out, I I like it as the main event. I mean, it's not the biggest names, but McDonald has headlined a card before. He has fought for the world championship in this division. And with a win over another top 10 ranked guy in John Lineker, Mike McDonald is right back to where he was before his injury, maybe one or two fights away. I think a matchup against Aljamain Sterling next, or possibly Brian Caraway, Cody Garbrandt, also Rafael Sunciao. There are a lot of guys out there for McDonald, but he has to get by John Lineker first. Before I get to my picks for the main card for UFC Sioux Falls, let's go to the interview I had earlier in the day with co-main event fighter for Sioux Falls in El Cucuy, Tony Ferguson. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Cage. I'm your host, Jim Graham, and joining me on the line today, we have a special guest. He will be fighting at UFC Sioux Falls. He is El Cucuy, Tony Ferguson. And Tony, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Now, of course, Tony, you were supposed to be taking on Michael Chiesa originally, and he injured out of this bout. You're now taking on newcomer Landon Vannata. And was that kind of a disappointment to not be able to fight a guy the caliber of Michael Chiesa?
Well, it depends on what you call caliber. You know, Michael Chiesa is an Ultimate Fighter winner. He has a couple losses. Landon Vannata is actually undefeated. He's 8-0. You know, a lot of these fighters that are coming out of this world, you can't just base it by who you fight for. You know, look at Sage Northcutt. He just got picked up, and he's being a superstar now. Myself, I went to the Ultimate Fighter house. Put in my time, put in my energy the same way Michael Chiesa was. So I'm guessing, yeah, you can guess that I was pretty pissed off.
Now, of course, you got a little hurt in your last scheduled bout back in April against Khabib, and that fight didn't materialize. And of course, then Khabib had wanted to take some time off following the fight in April. Is that still a fight you would like to have at some point against Khabib?
Oh, of course. I think the fans want to see it too. I think they want to see me out-wrestle Khabib and out-condition him and out-work him and take that hat and put it back on his head and send him back home to Russia. You know, this is one of those fights where I've never really had too much animosity towards anybody except for this guy. He just has a big mouth, man, and his fans always fight his fights for him. You know, I can't post a picture up on my family because, you know, well, I still do anyway, but I get so much heat on from all these Russians, so I started learning how to speak Russian because I started translating it all. And it's kind of funny how that happens, but, you know, it is what it is, and I would love to just go in there and humble this dude. He's got such a huge following, and I'm not sure why. He's got his first 10 fights in from Russia were at a max of 2 rounds apiece, at 5 minutes apiece. He never went the full three rounds, 5 minutes apiece. I don't know what the rules are in Russia for pro fights, but over here in America, we have 3 rounds. You got 15 minutes that you have to put in your time and put in your energy. He's got over 20 fights, undefeated, but half of them are like just, I don't know. So for me, he doesn't want to go the distance. He likes to try to get his fights in there and just lay and pray. And I like to light him up on his feet. And, you know, unfortunately for me, this Wednesday, I'm not fighting Khabib. But I prepared like I was fighting for him and Michael Chiesa at the same time. So Landon Vannata is going to have his hands full on Wednesday night.
Now, even though you're not facing a top 10 lightweight, do you still feel that if you're able to get a victory on Wednesday and add to your already impressive win streak that you have right now going in the UFC, which is 7 wins strong, this would give you 8. Do you feel that that is enough in itself to get you a shot at the lightweight title?
I think the 5 wins in a row actually would have been enough. These guys that talk their way to the title, I think it's BS. I like to earn my way there, so I don't really like to talk about it too much. But in an interview, I said that I was going to win and beat in orderly fashion. And so far, so good, man. I've done everything that I've said that I was going to do. And, you know, unfortunately for me, Pettis is out of the picture. He dropped weight. Cerrone went up a weight class. You know, Diaz doesn't want nothing to do with me right now. And neither does Connor. Alvarez, same thing. And RDA, you heard all these interviews that they gave. They don't want anything to do with me. Alvarez is looking for an easy fight. You know, he wants to try to keep his belt like he did in Bellator. Like, just sit there on it and then just try to enjoy it and ride it out. Milk it for what it is. You can't do that here, especially in the UFC. You're going to have to fight me one day or another. And I'm number 3 in the world. So number 2 is going to be next and number 1. But first is Landon Vannata. and I'm not looking past this dude. He's 8-0, very tricky. And in my fight camp, it's funny because I actually had a couple spies come in and work with me and then go back, and I didn't know that they were from Jackson Winklejohns or they worked with Landon, and I see them taking pictures with them. So obviously I'm a big threat to a lot of people if they have sending people like that, especially Khabib. But I'm going to keep doing what I got to do, and none of their training partners or trainers can go inside that octagon with them.
Now, because he's an unranked fighter and he's never fought in the UFC previously, does taking it on a guy like this and having a bad performance, is that kind of a risk facing a guy like that?
It doesn't matter, man. I mean, you're going to have a good performance or a bad performance regardless of who they put in front of you. I think if you take anybody a little too easy, I think that the shit's going to come back at you, dude. It's like spitting in the wind. You know, it's kind of like, you shouldn't, but it's gonna happen anyway. But for me, I already have it in my head. I've been running every single night at least 3 to 4 miles, getting acclimated to the 1,300 or 1,400 elevation out here. And it reminds me of home. It brings me back to peace to be out here and to not get so serious about it. Because when I'm having fun out there, I'm doing good. You can see it in my face when I smile. I'm hitting some Imanari rolls. I'm hitting some crazy kicks. I'm doing some good jiu-jitsu that nobody has seen before. And I'm pulling Darces left and right. And that's all because I'm having fun out there. I don't like to fight with a lot of tenacity. I like to fight with a lot of aggression and endurance and a lot of technique. And that's exactly what you guys are going to see come this Wednesday night.
Now, you mentioned Eddie Alvarez earlier. What did you think about his performance in winning the title over Rafael Dos Anjos?
I think he played smart. It was good. The first couple fights that he had, he sandbagged, and he showed absolutely nothing. All he did was just put a lot of pressure and try to do enough to get that win and sandbag it enough so nobody could see anything. So when he had that opportunity for the title, he could turn it up, and he did it. So props to him. RDA, he's a friend of mine, but, obviously we're competitors. But, it was a good fight. The fans got exactly what they wanted. And I'm very happy that I was fortunate to watch it because half of the other time I'm too busy training, like the fights this past weekend. I didn't even get a chance to check them out because I was out there running or doing sparring or doing some other stuff. So for my head, I think it was a good fight. It set up the platform for Alvarez and the changing of the guards. And that belt has never been held more than 3 times, by somebody or 2 times. It's always at the 155-pound division. It's just a monster cage. And right now I'm the ringleader of the monsters, so I'm El Cucuy, man, and these guys are going to have their hands full no matter who it is.
Now, with this fight being on Wednesday, most fights are usually on Saturday. Did that change your normal fight week preparation, or was it just business as usual for you?
No, I get the fight done quicker, man. I get to actually go and enjoy my weekend, it doesn't matter to me. I'm a competitor. I've wrestled Monday through Sunday, or Monday through Saturday. Never had really competitions on Sunday, but I've wrestled, dual meets, tournaments. We've had baseball games during the week. We've had scrimmages for football. And just growing up, just got used to being an athlete and just making sure that you're always ready. Because it doesn't matter what day it is, but, on any given day, anybody can win. Just making sure you're ready.
Now, of course, this is the UFC's first ever fight in South Dakota. So with you just kind of being in town for these last couple of days, how do you feel that the fans have welcomed you, or have you seen any cool things while you're there in South Dakota?
I love it out here. It reminds me of home back in Michigan. I'm from the Grand Rapids area, so it's cool to be able to kind of see home a little bit. Not as far out. I live in California now, but Sioux Falls is amazing. The people here are great. The area is amazing. The weather's a little crazy out here, but that's Midwest for you. Love it. And, Sioux Falls, I went to go see Sioux Falls the other day. I recommend everybody to come take a trip. We didn't get a chance to go see the monuments yet, but if you guys get an opportunity to come check it out, we just saw a couple thousand bikes the other day. They had a March of Dimes thing that was out here on Saturday, and it was cool to be able to see how many bikes. They had a bike rally. I'm not sure if they were going to Sturgis or where they were going, but there were thousands of bikes that we sat there for maybe 45 minutes to try to make a left turn. And we had there, and it was so cool to see so many bikes go through. And we've seen so many different types of things out here. It's been so awesome. I love it.
All right, I'll get you out of here with this, Tony. Of course, your former coach on The Ultimate Fighter, Brock Lesnar, made his return to the octagon after nearly 5 years away from the sport. And I was wondering, what did you think about his performance and win over Mark Hunt?
I didn't get to see the whole fight. I saw highlights, and I just want to say I was proud of him. He's my coach from back in the day, and he sponsored me for a little bit, and we still talk. So I was so excited just to see him be able to get his hand raised and even just compete again. Because for what he went through as far as the diverticulitis and the WWE, and it's just a lot. It's a lot, man. And I'm just proud of him that he overcame. He did it, and he beat a top opponent, man. Mark Hunt's no joke. He did what he had to do. He got the victory, and I hope to see him back in the octagon sometime soon.
He is Tony Ferguson. You can see him fight Wednesday night on Fox Sports 1 at UFC Fight Night 91, and you can follow him on Twitter at Tony Ferguson XT. Thanks again, Tony, for coming on the show. I really appreciate it and look forward to your fight on Wednesday.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Once again, that was El Cucuy, Tony Ferguson, right here on Beyond the Cage. And with that said, let's get to picks here for UFC Fight Night 91, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, 9 p.m. in the East, starting on Wednesday, July 13th, kicking off in the flyweight division, Luis Smolka against Ben Nguyen. I really do like both guys, but I consider Luis a friend, and it's going to be hard for me to pick against him in a fight, and I'm going to take The Last Samurai to win this fight. Looking in the welterweight division, Kyle Noke against Keita Nakamura. I think Nakamura's all right. I think he's a solid guy, but I think Kyle Noke is just a better, well-rounded fighter, and of course trains with such a great camp there in Jackson's Winklejohn. I think he'll be more than prepared for anything that Nakamura throws him. So give me the Australian Kyle Noke to win this one. Heavyweight division, Olenek against Olmanzuk, if I said that correctly. I don't know what to expect, but I think Alexei is just... I think he's obviously the more experienced fighter, but I just think he's the better fighter as well. And despite coming off a long layoff like that, the dude's fought 60 times professionally. So he knows how to fight. He's been in there too many times. I don't expect any rust against him, and I expect the Russian to pick up another victory. Tim Boesch against Josh Salmon. I think Salmon's going to be able to keep this fight at range enough to possibly get a knockout over Boesch. I think Boesch will probably be able to land a takedown or two, but I don't think he'll be able to continually get on the inside to get a takedown against the taller and longer Josh Salmon. So I'm going to take Josh Salmon for the victory. Tony Ferguson against Lando Vannata. Fortunately for Vannata, you got to make your UFC debut against a top 5 guy in your weight class and up a weight class. He has fought previously at 145 pounds. So, kudos to you taking this fight on short notice, but you're going to have your work cut out for you here against El Cucuy, who is priming for a shot at the UFC title. Michael McDonald against John Lineker, a matchup of 2 top 10 bantamweight fighters in the main event. Good fight. I think it's going to be a finish. I think Lineker always has a puncher's chance, but I think he's going to have a tough time dealing with an elite fighter at this weight class and a guy that is much bigger and stronger than him, and a guy I think will be able to see those punches coming, counter, and possibly get a submission. So give me Michael Mayday McDonald to win this one. Once again, I'd like to thank my partners at MMAforlife.ca, MMAinsider.net, AJ Hiller, and of course, as I mentioned in my interview last week, Claudia Gadelha, helping run and co-own Claudia Gadelha's gym there in Strasburg, Pennsylvania. So, and also running the #1 website in the world for MMA memorabilia and MMA Signatures, USA.com. So shout out to AJ Hiller. Of course, my friends on Facebook, MMA Fight Club, like their page, facebook.com/MMA Fight Club. Join the discussion. And also, if you're looking for MMA discussion, always supporting the show and retweeting my stuff, the MMA community, MMAcommunity.com. Check out their forums, some of the best online forums you can get. Also, they do a lot of cool Q&As with many top MMA athletes as well. Shout out to Flying Brian J, who always retweets my stuff and also is a MMA YouTube creator as well, so shout out to him. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to Sean Jacoby, American Icon Autographs as well. So for them and myself, I am Jim Graham. Thank you for tuning into another edition of Beyond the Cage. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham, and of course you can follow the show stay updated on picks and my results and everything. I went 8-7 this past week. Hope to do better. Hopefully, here for Sioux Falls, so you can check out all that at our Facebook page, facebook.com/BeyondTheCage Podcast, as we're nearing 500 likes in our 500 likes contest. So check out all the prizes, giving away a whole bunch of signed photos. So check that again, facebook.com/BeyondTheCage Podcast. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel right here on YouTube, youtube.com/BeyondTheCage Podcast. And also thank you to Tony Ferguson for joining me here on the show this week. So thanks again for listening to another edition of Beyond the Cage, and I will be back later this week with my breakdown of Sioux Falls, as well as a preview for Bellator's first trip to London. So thanks again for tuning in to Beyond the Cage right here on YouTube.